All right, on today's podcast, we're going to talk about the consequences of solvent treated magnesium. So, we have had a serious epidemic of magnesium deficiency throughout the last century, for sure. And it's a growing deficiency. It'll probably get worse and worse because of the soil. We're still at only 1% of farms using like compost and anything that would bring magnesium naturally back. And it's a slow thing to bring back. It takes a few generations, actually. It's not just like you can just throw it all in there. And so this will get worse. Some of the trends we see, from coffee to chocolate to all these other stimulant trends, usually have underneath them deficiencies as the origin of the trend. So whether it be special fats or special like connection to iodine, cofactors, things like that are in these more exotic foods that become commonplace. And I've found that chocolate, when you combine it with cream or milk or something, actually brings some of the iodine cofactors to help assimilate the iodine in the milk, if the milk has iodine anymore in it, because you have to do a little bit of searching to find it, or you have to learn how to extract it out of decent milk in your region, raw milk, through other processes such as making farmer's cheese and etc. So all that to get back to the fact that the deficiencies are a big reality that is the predecessor of a lot of our trends. And so learning how to, I guess you could say, learning how we treat magnesium and how we've thought about this for a while, as we start to think maybe there's some consequences to this. Have we been playing God with this molecule? Is the whole pill paradigm because it works a little bit, therefore everybody's kind of happy, it's okay, we're all good, we don't need any help? Or is it more like we never get out of the deficiency and we're contaminating our body with weak magnesium bonding agents, like magnesium in itself, the tentacles and its own little star formation, and this kind of magnesium at a molecular level, if you could say, and paying attention to how those, I guess you could say, not tentacles, but how it interacts. It has a structure and it interacts with other things in the body. And so if it's able to be cut apart and solvent treated, every time you, like say for example, you pull it out of chalk, or you try to pull magnesium out of gypsum, or some other layer where they pull Epsom salt out of certain layers of the earth which were much more abundant, and you kind of extract it. It's not like you go to Epsom or you go to Bath and you kind of get this soft stone or whatever it is, and this kind of special stone like they used to. Now they just extract what they can out of chalkier substances, which is like whiter or less white substances. And so they end up, because the stone itself is not fully clear in nature, you have to do a lot of solvent treatment. If it was clear, you wouldn't have to do any solvents. It would be a natural state magnesium chloride, which is called bischofite. It's found in nature and it's super abundant underneath the Zechstein Sea, in the Zechstein Sea, which is an enormous quantity, almost the size of Scandinavia, underneath the North Sea. So can you imagine? It's thousands of years of magnesium. The world should look no further than that, and we should all just stop, at least the Western world, as we found the big jackpot, so to speak. But that's not what happens. So a lot of Asian lookalikes come in, and also bromine from Salt Lake and mercury-filled waters and things from the Tibetan Plateau, which have been exploited by China. And we have a lot of different infeed of minerals from Mongolia on down to Salt Lake City. And so learning how they really do this stuff is important, because if you start changing the molecule itself, then you have to think it's also changing how it bonds with everything, right? The bonding power. And so if it has less bonding capacity and uptake and chelation and all of these, they're not just words. I mean, magnesium triggers the enzymes, and the enzymes help chelate. They help shake things down, fractalize. Magnesium malate in the body, malic acid teams up with magnesium, and they break down ammonia. I mean, they break down aluminum through a typical. It's not an ammonia principle, but it's like an acidification process, and so that helps to break down the metals. And so these help get some of this stuff out of the body, but not only metals, but like endocrine disruptors, coagulation, um, aging glycated products, and other things like that, acid residues, things like that, which cause aging. You know, so a lot of this stuff has to get out of the body, and I guess we think with all the 4G, 5G, and some of these other things that none of that stuff is real. It's just waves coming through us, but we don't realize that those things create coagulations. They create things in the body. They actually create physical material. And so that the body has to get rid of that material or move it along or whatever it is. And so that's basically kind of a way to tax the system and make it slower, like a virus in a computer. Just slows it all down. Your computer still works, but it's just annoying. And so that's kind of one of the ways that we get drained. So really important to stay with the natural purity when it comes to these things, especially in the material world. Okay, if we're talking emotions, we're talking philosophy, we're moving into another sphere and there's a different set of rules. But when we're back in like food and the body and history, we go through tradition and we go through how we learned about all this material world and minerals. And so that at that level, I guess you could say that material level, food and some of these things, that's where we have to kind of, you don't want like a scientist making your food. You want like someone, like some French chef somewhere or whatever, or some Vietnamese sushi or Vietnamese like food or pho, or, you want like something that's traditional, and the more traditional, the better in that world. Now, when it comes to like emotional healing, you're not looking for something always super traditional. You might find new approaches because we're kind of moving up into a freer sphere. But the body itself and that world of minerals, we have to pay attention to tradition and how our ancestors got these things and be very wise to not leave the body behind and get lost, kind of lose our feet, so to speak. And so I think America's been doing that for a while. Europe has a lot of body and soul, and America has a lot of spirit, and I love America for that. But we can't forget our feet. Like America kind of leads in that way, but we can't lose our feet, our footing. So trying to help understand how important it is, this molecule, and to not mess with it, not put it in plastic. As soon as you put it in plastic, you get all these little beads on the edge of the molecule, and so that allows it has less capacity to pull those same plastics out of your body, and it actually has a reverse effect. It actually drops off plastics into the cells because it has keys and locks to all your cells. So there's certain things you just don't want to weaponize. I always tell people when it comes to basic items like food, like butter, bread, salt, milk, and any of these like basics, yeah, you want to spend a lot of money. Eggs. You don't want to be like the guy who gets the cheap eggs at the grocery store. That's one place you don't want to be stupid. You want to spend the most money you can probably on that cheaper item because it's so basic. And so that way you get better quality stuff. And it's not always better quality just because it's higher price, but in general there can be some truth there. So, it's like treating yourself, so to speak. And so it's really important that this molecule stays natural in its natural state from a clear stone. And you can only do that if you go through the Zechstein. There's other ways to do it, but it's harder because they don't have such a high concentration of bischofite underneath. This is like something you can't recreate. That's the problem. In the American market, they want to just be able to recreate all their stuff. And so it's a sad story that a lot of these brands, like these ancient and genuine and all these kind of false certifications that you have out there, like these companies, they import from Asia, most of them, and they definitely don't import from the center in Holland, from the Zechstein side, one batch controlled source in all of Holland. So that's for sure, because I've asked them and I've tried to get certificates of origin from all these companies. They won't give you that. They won't let you call their source at the source and talk to the engineers. You can do that with this product, with our products. But what I'm trying to say is that it's really important not to mess with that molecule. That molecule needs to stay. That needs to be the stuff you pay the entrepreneur for, is that he's protecting that molecule at all costs. And you don't pay him for trying to, cheapen that and find a way to get better distribution just through using plastic and things that distributors will take. They're like, we don't want glass because it shines a light on our plastic, so we'll take you if you're in plastic. And so you have to find people that are strong enough to pine the way through and keep the glass and keep things in the way they're supposed to be done. And don't be afraid. Don't say, oh, it's shipped in plastic, these big totes. Like, what does it matter, the glass? It does. It's a big deal. The totes are nothing compared to what it turns into when you bottle into thousands and thousands of soft user in plastics, not totes, but soft user in plastics that are made for aspect. And you pour it into all of these surface area, multiplying the surface area by 5,000%, 10,000%, that's when you damage the product. It's not through shipping and then bottling in glass, not at all. So we're trying to, you can't avoid certain realities down here, but you have to mitigate, so where you can keep this protection going so that, you can eliminate some of these heavy metals and endocrine disruptors and chemical plastics from your own body and get them out through the magnesium. They won't do that if they're completely plasticated, sitting on that shelf in that halogen light with in that cheap plastic bottle, going over, however many months, how many years, then you using it, and then oxygen comes into effect, and then it's just like degrading and degrading. Why? Why go through all that when you can spend $5 more and get glass or whatever? So do it right. Don't go cheap on this area and get the right stuff and realize that the molecule is very important. As soon as you start messing with it, how do we know it's not messing with all of our calcium formation in the body? How do we know it's not weaker bonding? It makes perfect sense that it's a weaker bond. Because think about it. If you have to put in a solvent to pull bromine and mercury out, then how are you going to hope to pull that same mercury out of the body? So what happens is you're pulling that mercury out of the substance because it's got it already in there because you had to use a substrate that's not pure, which is 99.9% of the market. And so then you just extract it all out and you man purify. You don't let nature purify to that clear stone, which takes 250 million years. You purify. And so what happens is when man purifies it, the solvents are used, and the solvents take little nubs all off of the molecule to where by the end you have this truncated little fingerless hand walking around in your body that's trying to bond with these little nubs through everything it tries to do. And it still does things. It's not like ineffective completely, but we've knocked out a huge potential, especially to pull out a lot of these modern toxins and to be sticky enough to get that to happen. And even, I guess you could say, not living or live or raw or whatever you want to call it enough to activate a lot of these enzymes at a higher level. Higher electrical level. The electricity comes through structure and mechanics too. It's not just random. And so if we start messing with the structure, we mess with the electricity of the magnet or the magnesium. So follow history. Don't worry about the next study that's going to come out to prove finally that it all works and that And that's never going to come out. If they find a cure for cancer, you're never going to see that study. You're going to see 4 or 5 studies that of them trying to shut down something that tried to help cancer, probably, and disproving it at this point. So you have to be more alert now to the fact that that's almost a naive game at this point. And we have to adult a little bit when it comes to those types of things. And just realize that probably cancer is probably a threefold mystery that takes a couple, 2 or 3 approaches all at once. And some of them may be quite simple. But, I had a friend who used fenbendazole, and he had a face tumor all over his face, and he couldn't get anything to stop it. And now after a few 4 or 5 months of that, it's been going down like rapidly. It's almost gone. It's crazy. And this stuff costs $20. You see, so that is one idea that you realize that just because you'd never find that fenbendazole because it's a goat dewormer, and so therefore you'd never figure it out. Well, there it is, the truth out of a horse's mouth. So anyway, be careful with the molecules. Don't play Brave New World here with people's bodies. Get the right stuff. Come to us, theheartoftradition.com, and hopefully more people will step up and start helping spread this transdermal gospel, because there's a lot of people who need it. We're only touching 1% of the market. There's a lot of people who need help here. And we need the glass, we need the original source, we need everything to stay pure, just like they do in Europe. Don't change it, don't touch it, get out of the way. And if distributors want this, that, or the other, then just back off and find your own way. You might make less money, but you have to find a way which works with your ethics over time, so that way you're actually creating something that no one else is, so that people who seek can find. So anyway, thanks, and come check us out at theheartoftradition.com.